My beloved child. There are moments in life that seem ordinary until heaven gently lifts the veil and allows you to see that far more has been unfolding than your eyes could ever perceive. Perhaps today feels like one of those ordinary days. Perhaps you wondered whether anyone truly understood the journey you have walked, the silent prayers you whispered when no one else was listening, or the quiet hope you carried even after disappointment tried to convince you to let it go. But there is something I want you to know. Long before this moment found you, conversations were taking place beyond your awareness. Not every word spoken about your future has been filled with doubt. Not every voice has stood against you. Some hearts have been changing in ways you never expected. You have spent so much time believing that closed doors meant rejection. Yet sometimes a closed door is simply a room where decisions are still being made. Sometimes silence is not refusal. It is preparation. You have asked me why certain people seem distant. You questioned why answers arrived so slowly. You wondered whether your name had already been forgotten by those connected to the path ahead. It had not. There were evenings when your name entered conversations unexpectedly. No announcement preceded those moments. No dramatic sign appeared. Someone simply mentioned you. A room that had been filled with ordinary discussion became unusually quiet. Not because your name brought anger. Because it stirred curiosity. One person remembered something kind that had been said about you months before. Another quietly admitted that every story they had heard about you seemed surprisingly consistent. Someone else, who had never expected to defend you, found themselves speaking with unexpected compassion. None of them understood why their hearts felt different that evening. But heaven knew. For I have always been able to soften hearts without forcing them. I do not shout over free will. I whisper into places pride cannot fully silence. And sometimes the smallest whisper changes the direction of an entire family. Still, the greatest surprise has not yet arrived. For while they believed they were discussing you, another conversation was unfolding beyond anything they could see. The hearts around that table were not changing by accident. Grace had already begun its quiet work. And what began as uncertainty was slowly becoming something entirely different. A quiet change had already begun, though no one in that room realized it. One family member broke the silence with a question that seemed ordinary on the surface but carried unexpected weight. What if we've misunderstood this person all along? Those simple words lingered in the air. No one answered immediately. It was as if every heart in the room had been invited to revisit memories they had pushed aside. One remembered hearing about your kindness from someone who had nothing to gain by speaking well of you. Another recalled the patience you showed during a difficult season, even when no one thanked you. A third remembered how you never tried to force your place into anyone's life. Instead, you quietly continued walking your path with dignity. They had expected the conversation to end there. Instead, it grew deeper. The assumptions that had once seemed certain suddenly became fragile. Sometimes, child, the greatest miracle is not a dramatic sign in the sky. It is a heart willing to question its own judgment. While those conversations continued, your soulmate remained completely unaware of what was happening behind closed doors. They had been carrying a quiet burden, believing their family would never understand what they felt. They had rehearsed countless conversations in their mind, only to remain silent every time the opportunity appeared. Yet without realizing it, the very discussion they feared was unfolding naturally. Not because anyone forced it. Because truth has a gentle way of finding its moment. As each voice entered the conversation, another unexpected realization surfaced. Someone admitted that they had been watching your character from a distance for far longer than anyone knew. They weren't watching to criticize you. They were trying to understand you. They noticed how you treated people who could offer you nothing in return. They noticed how you remained respectful even during moments when others became impatient. They noticed that your actions remained consistent, whether anyone was watching or not. Character has a quiet voice, but it travels farther than loud opinions ever can. The room grew silent again. This time it was different. No one was searching for flaws anymore. They were searching for answers. Then an older member of the family slowly spoke. "I think we've been asking the wrong questions." Everyone looked toward them. "We've been asking whether this person is good enough for our family." Another pause followed. "But perhaps we should have been asking whether our family is willing to recognize someone with a genuinely kind heart." No one argued. The words settled deeply. Even those who had once been hesitant found themselves reflecting instead of resisting. Far away, you continued living your ordinary day, completely unaware that opinions were quietly transforming. You believed nothing was changing. Yet heaven often works in places you cannot see before you ever notice the results. The conversation shifted again. This time it became personal. One by one, family members began sharing moments from their own lives, times when they had been misunderstood, judged too quickly, or dismissed before anyone truly knew them. As those memories surfaced, compassion replaced certainty. It became harder to judge someone they barely knew when they remembered how painful it felt to be misunderstood themselves. Your story was quietly changing the atmosphere without you even being present. Then came the moment no one expected. Someone looked directly at your soulmate and asked a question that caused every heartbeat in the room to feel louder. "Tell us honestly. When you think about them, do you feel peace?" The room waited. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. For a long moment, no words came. Finally, with complete sincerity, they answered softly. "Yes." Not excitement alone. Not fantasy. Peace. Those 4 letters carried more weight than any long explanation. The room remained silent. Because deep within every heart is the understanding that genuine peace cannot easily be manufactured. It reveals itself quietly. It stays when emotions settle. It remains when circumstances become uncertain. The conversation that began with hesitation had become something entirely different. Yet the most surprising decision had not been spoken aloud. One final voice had remained completely silent throughout the evening. Until now. That person slowly leaned forward, took a deep breath, and prepared to say something that would change everything your soulmate believed about their family's opinion. And that single sentence would begin a completely unexpected chapter. The room became so still that even the smallest sound seemed unusually loud. Every eye turned toward the family member who had remained silent from the very beginning. Throughout the entire conversation, they had listened without interruption, observing every opinion, every hesitation, every change of heart. No one could predict what they were about to say. When they finally spoke, their voice carried neither excitement nor criticism. It carried conviction. I've been waiting for the right moment, they began. Not because I was uncertain, but because I wanted everyone else to reach this place on their own. A ripple of surprise moved across the room. Your soulmate looked up in disbelief. What do you mean? The answer came slowly. I met them. Silence. Not a single person expected those words. Your soulmate's eyes widened. You met them? A gentle nod followed. Not for long. They probably don't even remember me. It wasn't planned. It was one of those ordinary moments people often forget. The room leaned in. But I never forgot. Another pause. I watched how they treated someone who couldn't offer them anything in return. No audience. No recognition. No reason to pretend. The atmosphere shifted again. They didn't know anyone was paying attention. That's when I realized something. Character is easiest to fake when people are watching. It is hardest to fake when no one is. Your soulmate felt emotion rising within them. For months they had worried that their family would only judge appearances, rumors, or assumptions. Instead, someone had quietly witnessed a completely different side of you. The family member continued. I never told anyone because I didn't think the time was right. But tonight, I believe everyone deserves to hear what I saw. They described the quiet encounter in careful detail. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was genuine. They remembered your calm smile. Your patience. The respect you showed without expecting anything back. The kindness that appeared effortless rather than performed. As they spoke, each memory dismantled another layer of uncertainty that had surrounded your name. One relative whispered softly. That doesn't sound like the person people tried to describe. The older family member smiled. That's because rumors are loud. But truth is consistent. Those words settled deeply into every heart. Meanwhile, your soulmate remained almost speechless. They had spent countless nights praying for understanding. Yet they never imagined heaven would begin answering those prayers through conversations they were never supposed to control. That is one of my quiet works, child. When you surrender what you cannot manage, I often begin moving within places your hands could never reach. You may think nothing is changing because your eyes cannot see it. But I do not measure progress by what is visible today. I measure it by what is quietly taking root beneath the surface. The discussion continued. This time no one questioned your intentions. Instead, they began wondering about your future. One asked, what are their dreams? Another wondered, what kind of family do they hope to build someday? Someone quietly asked, what makes them smile? Notice what had happened. Only a short while earlier, the conversation centered on uncertainty. Now it centered on possibility. Hearts that once searched for reasons to doubt had begun searching for reasons to understand. That transformation did not happen because someone argued louder. It happened because grace gently replaced assumption with compassion. Then your soulmate spoke again. There was a vulnerability in their voice that few had ever heard. I've tried to forget them. I told myself it would be easier. I convinced myself to move on. They stopped for a moment, collecting themselves. But every time I prayed for peace, their name returned to my heart. No one interrupted. I don't know every detail of the future. I only know that every time I ask heaven to remove these feelings, I receive peace instead of distance. The family exchanged quiet glances. One by one, they began to understand that this was not a passing emotion. It had endured through silence, uncertainty, waiting, and unanswered questions. An older relative finally smiled. Perhaps we've been witnessing something we didn't recognize. Another nodded. Perhaps this connection deserves patience instead of pressure. Those simple words carried unexpected warmth. For the first time, your soulmate no longer felt alone inside their own home. Something had shifted. Not completely. Not perfectly. But unmistakably. Then came the moment that no one saw coming. The oldest member of the family stood and walked toward a small wooden cabinet tucked into the corner of the room. They opened the drawer with careful hands. Inside rested an old envelope, slightly worn by time. No one else seemed to know it was there. Your soulmate looked confused. What is that? The elder held the envelope gently and smiled. I never thought this day would come. I've been waiting for the right moment to open this. Every person in the room watched in silence as the envelope was placed carefully on the table. No one knew what it contained. But somehow, everyone sensed that whatever was inside had the power to change the entire conversation once again. And as the elder slowly reached for the seal, your soulmate felt a quiet certainty growing in their heart that heaven had been arranging this moment far longer than anyone could have imagined. The elder rested both hands on the old envelope for a long moment without breaking the seal. No one urged them to hurry. It was as though every person in the room sensed that this was more than a forgotten piece of paper. It represented years of quiet reflection, hidden prayers, and wisdom that had remained untouched until now. Your soulmate watched with a mixture of curiosity and emotion. I've never seen that before, they whispered. The elder smiled gently. That is because some things are not opened when people demand answers. They are opened when hearts are finally ready to receive them. The room fell silent once more. With careful hands, the envelope was opened. Inside was a neatly folded letter, its edges softened by time. The elder unfolded it slowly. I wrote this many years ago, they said quietly. Not for any specific person, but for the one who would someday enter our family with the right heart. A wave of surprise swept across the room. No one expected those words. Even the family members who had known the elder their entire lives had never heard about this letter. The elder began to read. If the day ever comes when someone enters your life who brings peace instead of pride, protect that person. If they choose kindness when no one is watching, honor them. If they remain humble even when misunderstood, listen before you judge. If they inspire faith instead of fear, never allow rumors to speak louder than character. Each sentence settled deeply into the hearts gathered around the table. It no longer felt like someone was reading old words. It felt as though those words had been waiting specifically for this evening. Your soulmate felt tears forming. Not because the letter mentioned your name. It never did. But every line seemed to describe the person they had quietly carried in their heart. One relative spoke softly. It almost feels as though this was written for them. Another nodded in agreement. I was thinking the same thing. The elder lowered the letter. No. It wasn't written for one person. It was written to remind us what truly matters whenever heaven brings someone unexpected into our lives. Those words lingered in the room. Then something even more remarkable happened. A family member who had once been the most skeptical stood up. Everyone expected another objection. Instead, they slowly looked toward your soulmate. I owe you an apology. The room froze. I dismissed your feelings before I tried to understand them. I listened to opinions before I looked for truth. I judged someone I've never truly known. Their voice trembled slightly. I don't want to make that mistake anymore. No one spoke. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not changing a circumstance. It is witnessing someone choose humility over pride. Your soulmate could hardly believe what they were hearing. Months of uncertainty seemed to dissolve in a single conversation. The fear they had carried began giving way to quiet hope. Far away, you remained completely unaware. You continued with your ordinary routine. Perhaps you were wondering whether your prayers had reached heaven. Perhaps you questioned whether anything was changing at all. Yet while you waited in silence, doors you could not see were beginning to open one after another. That is often how my timing unfolds. You rarely witness the roots growing beneath the ground. You notice only the tree when it finally appears. Trust the unseen work. For not every answer arrives with thunder. Many arrive through softened hearts, quiet conversations, and unexpected courage. As the evening continued, the family gathered around the table once more. This time the discussion was no longer about uncertainty. It became a conversation about the future. What if we welcomed them? Someone asked. What if we gave this connection the chance it deserves? Another replied. What if we've been resisting a blessing simply because it arrived differently than we expected? Each question carried more hope than fear. Then the elder smiled knowingly. I've been praying about this for weeks. Everyone looked surprised again. You have? The elder nodded. I asked heaven for one clear sign. The room leaned forward. And tonight, I received it. Your soulmate's heart raced. What sign? The elder looked around the room before answering. The sign wasn't a dream. It wasn't a vision. It wasn't a voice. The sign was watching every heart in this room become more compassionate instead of more divided. A peaceful silence followed. No one argued. No one objected. Everyone recognized that something extraordinary had happened, not through force, but through understanding. Then, just as the conversation seemed complete, a phone resting quietly on the table suddenly lit up. No one had touched it. A new message had arrived. The screen displayed only a few words before it locked again. Your soulmate glanced down instinctively. Their expression changed instantly. What is it? Someone asked. They stared at the screen without speaking. The elder noticed the emotion in their eyes. What did the message say? Your soulmate took a slow breath before answering. It says, there's someone at the front gate. No one had been expecting a visitor. Not at this hour. Yet somehow, every person in the room felt the same unexplainable certainty. The conversation inside the house had just ended. But another chapter was about to begin outside the door. And the identity of the unexpected visitor would leave every heart wondering whether this quiet evening had been part of a much greater story all along.